What is going on, everybody, in Wrestling Review Society's Facebook page, YouTube page, twitch.tv/HeelKevin, Real Pro Wrestling's YouTube page, and wherever you happen to be watching tonight. Thank you guys so much for tuning in for another pro wrestling interview. Guys, we have an absolutely amazing interview for you guys tonight. This lady has been absolutely tearing it up on the independent scene. I've seen her all throughout the state of Florida, and she just celebrated her wedding. So it's going to be a really cool conversation, and I thank you all for joining. Just before I pull my guest on, guys, I do want to take a quick second to thank all of our amazing sponsors who make this show happen each and every time I turn this camera on. First of which, you'll notice on our display shelf, the coldest water. Guys, these people make some of the best water bottles I've ever had in my entire life, and they just released their new line of pet bowls. So if you want to get something for your cat, your dog, or whatever animal you may have, go to thecoldestwater.com and use promo code WRESTLING to save 10% at checkout. Also, guys, thefirstwarrior.com. Firstwarrior.com is a patriotic clothing company. They make hats, shirts, stuff like that. They're working to create new merchandise for you guys each and every day, such as sweatpants and things like that. If you want your hands on any of their products, go to thefirstwarrior.com. First is spelled with a 1, not an I. Firstwarrior.com and use promo code WRS to save 10% at checkout. With that being said, guys, I don't want to waste any more time because I have absolutely been dying to sit down and talk to this person for a while. I saw her late last year for the first time. The first time I got to watch her wrestle, she was in a no disqualification match for the Atomic Bombshells Championship at the time, now changed to the Atomic Women's Championship. But it was an absolute banger of a match, and I knew right then I wanted to interview both those ladies. You guys watched me interview Reagan Fire not too long ago. Now here to explain the second second side of that match, none other than Chelsea Durden. Chelsea, how you doing?
Hello, I'm pretty not too bad.
Not too bad. I said in your intro that you just celebrated your wedding. How was that?
I did. The wedding was awesome. It was actually kind of funny how the whole thing went down. So my husband, who wrestles as Samson, the lion from Zion, yeah, he's right over there.
I've seen him at a couple shows. There's not many people that make me Chelsea, I stand 6'5". There's not many people that make me feel small. Your husband is one of them.
He's absolutely gigantic. It's pretty great. He's from Israel, and he was here for the last 6 months. He'd been here living with me on a tourist visa, and we had started our fiance visa process like last January after we got engaged. And because of COVID-19, like, this is an unprecedented situation that has never happened before in the history of immigration. So everything with all the embassies and stuff being shut down, we didn't know when that was going to happen. And Israel, like, goes back and forth between shutting down the airport and, like, all, services on and off. So I asked our immigration lawyer right at the end of February. I was like, hey, so what happens if his flight gets canceled because the airport is still closed? Because then he would be outside of the bounds of his tourist visa. And he's like, oh, that's fine. That's through no fault of his own. So he's not going to get in trouble or anything. I was like, all right, cool. And then he said, by the way, did you know that your initial approval, because we had gotten initial approval for the petition for the visa, and then there's a whole bunch of steps after that, expires in April. I was like, what? That expires? And he's like, yeah, we didn't mention it before because this has literally never happened before. They've never expired on any of our clients or anyone we've ever heard of, because that's not a thing that happens or has happened before. I was like, oh, nice. So then I'd have to redo the entire application. He said, yeah. Or you could just get married now while he's still here, and then we just file for the green card that way. And I was like, was that always an option? And he said,
why didn't you just say so in the beginning?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess because we really wanted to have our wedding of our dreams with like the whole family and stuff. And,
Absolutely.
And getting everybody over from Israel is no simple task. So and then the lawyer said, yeah, you can just bring us a marriage license from the courthouse. I'll sign it. You guys high five each other and, you're on your way. And I was like, well, table that for a second. We went to talk to my parents and they're like, yeah, we could bust out a wedding in like 2 weeks. Could we bust out a wedding in 2 weeks? And that's where the whole extravaganza came to play. We there was like maybe 20 people in my parents' living room. We were gonna have it in their yard, but it was gonna rain, and it did rain. But everything was beautiful. My dad found the only rabbi in the state of Florida who could perform a wedding service on 4 days' notice.
Like, we gotta take a second to really appreciate everything that you just went through. But just before I break it down, we have a whole bunch of comments coming in from our comment section. Aaron saying Chelsea is a badass. I would definitely agree.
Thanks,
Daniel
buddy.
Smith saying congratulations to you both. My good friend Heel Josh, who loves everything wrestling, says let's go. And we got a whole bunch of other comments, guys. If you have any questions for myself or Chelsea, please feel free to send those in. But I really want to congratulate you and draw attention to everything that you guys just went through. You executed a wedding during one of the most unprecedented times where you're not even supposed to have people gathering. You found the only rabbi in the state of Florida. You managed to stop your husband's, his, I guess, being deported because now he's married. They can't touch him. So congratulations on that. But everything you guys just went through and you nailed it in 2 weeks. That takes a normal person like years to plan. Not only did you do that, but you're balancing your wrestling. Your husband's a wrestler. You have your podcast going. You have so much on your plate, and you were able to knock all this out. Congratulations to the both of you, and I wish you nothing but a life of happiness.
Thank you. And of course, we had COVID protocols in place as well. I demanded tests from everybody.
So, we got the important part out of the way, because getting married is definitely something that deserves to be congratulated on. But now you say that your husband's a wrestler and he's originally from Israel. Did you guys meet through wrestling?
Yeah, it's actually it's a funny storybook type of meeting. I don't know if you've heard of Speedy Photos,
No.
Speedy the photographer. He's like the unsung hero of Florida wrestling, and he now does the portraits for AEW.
Mm-hmm.
He's, the past 10 years, he's worked up on the food chain, and now, if you don't have a promo photo by Speedy and you live anywhere close to Florida, it's like you're fucking up. You're doing something wrong. So he sometimes will host promo shoot days. Like he'll rent a little space. The last one he did is in Orlando, and this one happened to also be in Orlando. And I signed up for a photo shoot time slot. And the night before, I had an ARW show. This was in August 2019. So I just stayed with my friend in Orlando and then went to the photo shoot the next day. And it turns out his time slot was the one right before mine. So he and his tag team partner and a couple other people from Team 3D, that's where they all trained, were there in the hallway, and knew a few of them. I was like, oh, hi, how's everybody doing? And I ran to go get changed. And then I hear like muffled conversation from the hallway. This announcer, who had also had a time slot near mine, was asking him, so what's next for you? How long are you staying? And he said, well, my tourist visa is up in November, so I have to leave then, unless you know any nice Jewish girls. And because I'm a complete dumbass, and I just, there's like a disconnect between my brain and my mouth, I immediately popped my head out of the bathroom. I didn't know him. I'd never seen him before. I just popped my head out of the bathroom, and I was like, did somebody say nice Jewish girl? Because I'm hilarious.
You really are. Like I've seen you at a couple shows, and I'm not trying to cut your story off at all, but I've seen you at a couple shows. I've been at since you faced Destiny in the hardcore match for the women's or for the Bombshells title. I have been to every single ARW shows match. You are like before the show, because I always get a vendor table, so I'm always like mingling with you guys beforehand. Before the show, you are absolutely hilarious, and then the show kicks on, and it's just a light switch change, like night and day difference. We're gonna get into all of that, but you're absolutely right. You're a very funny person, so please continue your story.
Yeah, it's I'm not really sure how that happens. It's kind of like a moment in an anime, you know, when the colors change and everything, and then suddenly you just see in red. But anyway, I was like, yeah, what's up? And I was talking to him because it seemed like he was friends with all my friends that I knew from 3D. And then he wanted to show me this promo video that him and his tag team partner had filmed. And I will be the first person to admit, I don't care about anybody's videos. Not that I don't care about other people's promos, but it's like, if you're trying to like show me a video of something like you insist is super duper funny, I'm going to be like, yeah, I'll look at it later. And then I'll never look at it because I'm also, in addition to being hilarious, I'm also terrible. But it's mostly that I just have the attention span of a gnat. So he's like, yeah, let me show you this video. So he tries to show me on my phone, and then I can't see because we're not friends on Facebook. So I'm like, oh, I'll add you on Facebook. And then I sat and watched the video. It was really funny. It did actually capture my attention span, which bravo, because nothing fucking does anymore. And we kept talking throughout that whole week. A week later, we had our first date, and here we are.
Here we are. Well, mine's on this hand. Me and my wife are a very similar story. We went on one date, and we've kind of been glued at the hip ever since. Pretty much inseparable. So I definitely understand that. Now, we have one question coming in from the audience. I seen it earlier. Let me see if I can find it. We're going to be jumping around a little bit. We're not really going to go in order. We're just hanging out, having a fun conversation. So we're going to go ahead and knock out this one because it was on my agenda to ask you. Heel Kenny 132 says, Chelsea, do you remember your first match, and what is your favorite match?
I do remember my first match, despite how many times I've been kicked in the head in the last few years. It was a singles match against Santana Garrett at a flea market outside by the tire shop.
So you and Reagan Fire, also known as Destiny, shared the same first opponent.
We did, yeah.
That's incredible.
Santana helped train Reagan, and I'd say that she had a really big hand in, you know, my development as an athlete as well, because I worked her so many times throughout, you know, the beginnings of my indie career, and she taught me so much and she mentored me so much. I wouldn't be the wrestler I am today without her. And I was so nervous, and she was like, don't worry, I've been a lot of girls' first matches, you know, we're going to be fine. And I was like, that's what's up. And yeah, Santana's the best.
I find it very poetic in a sense that the match that really made me a fan of both you and Destiny, you guys shared the same first opponent. Like it's a crazy coincidence for me. I didn't know that, and thanks for sharing that. But when did you realize that you wanted to be a professional wrestler? Like at what age, and what was it that hooked you into pro wrestling? Because this, as we, not so much anymore, but you know, back when you and I were growing up, it was pretty much a male dominating sport, and the only spotlight females really got were for reasons other than their wrestling talent. So at what point did you realize that you wanted to be a pro wrestler?
Well, I have the same story as most people growing up. You know, I was always a fan. I started watching wrestling when I was around 5 or 6 because it was my brother's favorite thing in the world at the time. And I was a huge tomboy. I wanted to be just like my brother. He was my hero. In a lot of ways, he still is. And I fell in love with wrestling. My favorite thing, not just my favorite wrestler, but my favorite thing was the Undertaker of all time. It was the best thing. I had a hand-me-down action figure of the Undertaker from my brother that I used to take everywhere until my dog chewed the head off of it.
Yeah, we got the 30-year anniversary action figure right up there at the top. It's that glossy thing in the back.
Yeah.
Where the light's shining off of. But yeah, Undertaker's great.
That's my boy. To me, he represented the mysticism and the great fantasticness of everything that's wrestling. He's like the last secret bastion of professional wrestling, the best kept secret. I was like, yes, all of it.
He really drew you in before he ever did anything. Just that entrance alone drew you in and wanted to know who this guy was and what he was going to do and why is everybody so afraid of him. Just his entrance alone, before he ever landed a punch or snatched a headlock or did anything, he drew you in, and very few wrestlers have been able to do that.
Oh yeah, it's an art. It's a real art form. And at 5, I was there. And my brother moved on with his life from, phase to phase. Wrestling was a phase for him. It wasn't a phase for me. It was a lifelong phase. This is who I really am, Mom.
So let's talk about that for a second. How did your parents feel about you wanting to be a pro wrestler?
They were never anything less than supportive. They thought it was so cool. It's I hear a lot of different stories from my peer groups that, their parents weren't as supportive and thought, oh, isn't that really dangerous or that's really stupid? But my parents were always never anything less than completely supportive. They thought it was so cool that I was chasing after this dream that I've had since I was a kid, and that I could have I could realistically fulfill that. And they were like, that's the coolest thing ever. My dad shows pictures of my injuries to his friends. It's pretty great. I have this a photo also taken by Speedy of one of the times I had won a title, and my parents were there at ringside, and I came to hug them, and he captured that perfect moment. It was like the money shot right there, and they have it framed in their living room.
It's always a great feeling when you have the support of people who mean the most to you. So the fact that you had your parents' support, I'm sure, helped you tremendously on your journey to become a pro wrestler. Now, just before we get into that and where you went to school, all the basic stuff that we get to before we get into who Chelsea Durden actually is, I have a question that I like to ask the female talent, and I promise you it's going to be respectful. But, when we were growing up, like I said earlier, I imagine we're around the same age. I'm not going to ask you your age, but I'm 29.
I also just turned 29.
Well, I'll be 30 next month. So yeah, we're right at the same age. I don't know because I'm not a female. I didn't grow up as a female wrestling fan, but for you to be a fan of wrestling and watching on TV, especially during the Attitude Era, seeing how women were used or portrayed on TV, did that ever stray you away from wanting to be a pro wrestler? Or did you know that you wanted to become a pro wrestler and change the way women were perceived in pro wrestling? Because now women have a spotlight just as big as the men, just as they should have.
Yeah, that it never discouraged me when I was a kid, because I had the mentality when I was a kid, and because I was such a tomboy, my parents always made sure that I knew that I could do anything a guy could do. So the fact that for the most part during my formative years, women were not portrayed as elite athletes like the men, they weren't given the spotlight, that never deterred me, like, at all. I was still 100% certain, and had, the women's revolution really kicked off right when I was starting wrestling school. But even if it hadn't, I don't see that would have deterred me at all, because it definitely didn't before I started wrestling. And I knew that either I was perfectly willing to take on the weight of the world and shoulder the responsibility of changing women's wrestling for everyone. Mm-hmm. They kind of did all that for me. So, but there's still work to be done, and I'm so there and ready to do it.
No, absolutely. And, one of the things that I really respect about you is, like I said, I've been to a couple of the ARW events, and at this last one, the first one in the new building, There was a former WWE talent there, known as the Ascension, now the Awakening, and I just remember standing there watching you and walking up to Connor and picking his brain and asking him questions. You really seem like a student of the game, and you're always hungry to pick the brain of the ones who came before you or the ones who can help elevate you. And to have that mindset that you don't know everything and you need the help of people to gain that knowledge is a very commendable trait that you have, and I respect the hell out of you for it.
I think it's a mindset you have to have. I've been wrestling for almost 7 years, but there are people who have forgotten more about bad wrestling than I have ever known, or maybe ever will know. It's everybody says that they're still learning. William Regal says that he learns something new about pro wrestling every day. And I'm not nearly on the level where I can just confidently walk around and say that I know all I need to know, because if I did, then I should hang up my boots, because there's always a level to keep reaching with your skill and your knowledge. And especially someone like Connor, I've become fairly close with him and his wife, Chrissy Vane, and I pick their brain whenever I can, because they've been where I want to be. And they have those years of knowledge and experience. And I try to latch on to anyone who's still passionate about the wrestling business, who wants to make the wrestling business a better place than it was when they got into the business. Because someone like Chrissy Vane, Connor's wife, started her career in the era of women are not a big deal in wrestling. They don't really wrestle. They're not athletes and what have you. And now is returning to wrestling in an era where women's wrestling is a huge deal. It main events a lot of shows. And it's really important to try and learn from those people.
No, I completely agree. And one of the things that we hear all the time on this show, I've been very fortunate to interview quite a few people from the world of pro wrestling. And one thing that is the same no matter who I've interviewed, they always say, if you think you know it all, there's the fucking door. Because that's how you get people hurt. So the fact that, like you said, you're always trying to pick people's brain and trying to get better, and you understand that you don't know everything and you're never going to know everything, but you want to know as much as you can, like I said, is a very respectable trait that you have. But now, earlier in the show, did I hear you right? You said you went to the 3D Academy?
No, that's where my husband trained.
Okay, so where did you initially find wrestling school at?
I started out at a wrestling school down in South Florida that wasn't great, and after that, I spent a few years there. And after Gangrel opened up a school, I started attending that school. And he had previously, before he opened his school, he spent a lot of time at my first school and was working with me and some of the people there. And I learned a lot from him. I like to say that I learned most of my cool tricks from him. So I spent a while at his school, probably almost 2 years. And I'd like to say I almost started my career over when I started training with him, and it took him a while to break me out of a lot of bad habits that I'd picked up. And here I am now in transitioning to post-pandemic life, trying to figure out what my next step in training is, because I moved up to Central Florida, and there's so many good schools and trainers around in this area just within an hour or two of me.
Yeah, and Florida has no lack of talent running around in the state of Florida. But I want to address this comment really quick from Wrestling Pops watching on our Twitch channel. This man is absolutely great, Chelsea. He's a 40-year wrestling fan. He teaches me something every day we talk. He says, Chelsea is amazingly awesome in the ring. After I heard she was going to be on the War Room, I did my homework on her. And he says, darn it, Kevin, I was going to ask her about working with the other talent. Well, Pops, I beat you to it, and now you know. So after you after you find the new wrestling school, and like you said, your career pretty much got a jump start. You restarted your career, breaking those bad habits. How did you go about how hard was it for you to find bookings after going to a proper wrestling school and being trained the right way and breaking those bad habits? How was it trying to find bookings? Did bookings come easier to you, or was it still in that time where women really weren't getting the push that they deserved?
No, they definitely were by that time. I honestly don't know if it was easier or harder because in the first stage of my career, I didn't really control my own bookings. I wasn't really allowed to like go certain places or go places by myself. But so, almost 5 years into my wrestling career, I was having to, reach out to promoters for the first time. And that was like that's a huge thing, obviously, with getting booked and getting yourself out there that I didn't really know how to do and had to teach myself on the go. Nobody taught me how to approach people, or how to get on shows. So I put on my customer service voice and, started messaging promotions. And now I've made a pretty decent loop for myself in the Florida area. I've been out of state, I've been out of the country. And it's not easy though, because someone like me, I deal with a lot of anxiety issues, to the point where making a doctor's appointment is sometimes like, I could call, but I'm sure I can just sew my ear back on my head myself, right? And just like not talk to anybody.
Spoken like a true wrestling fan.
And so that was initially really, really difficult. It's like I would type out a message, I would look at it, and read it a bunch of times. I would send it to my best friend, and have her read it, and then make sure that I'm not crazy, that there's like no typos in it or something. And then I would like press send and then probably throw my phone, be like it's about to explode because I just sent a message. And that's how I write promoters. So if any of them are out there, just know that it was very difficult for me to contact you initially for booking because I'm terrified of everything. It's weird. I'm scared of nothing and I'm fearless and I'm like, let's fucking go. I'm ready to fucking die tonight. But at the same time, I'm terrified of everything. It's a dichotomy. It's not a healthy balance. I will say that.
It's such a duality in life. And to hear you tell the story it's absolute. Like I've seen you in the ring, Chels. Like I've seen you go after people. I've seen you almost rip people's head off. And just to hear you, I can't send a message. Like I'm not, by no means am I making fun of anxiety or anything like that.
Not at all.
But just getting to know you is been a real pleasure so far, and I'm having such a great time sitting down and getting to know you. But let's talk about that for a second, because like I said, you are a completely different person when that bell rings, when it's time to go. When the show is, from the time the show, I don't even want to say when the bell in your match rings, but from the time the fans start coming in, because one of the advantages to getting the merchandise tables and stuff like that is I'm able to come in early and I kind of see the interaction between the wrestlers. So I see you on both sides of the coin. And once those doors open, once the paying customers come in and these are the people you're here to put a show on for, you put on a freaking show. How hard is it for somebody who is, in your words, terrified of everything to flip that switch and now make everybody terrified of you, because you have the look, the intensity, everything. I mean it. I'm not just saying this because you were here. I said this to a mutual friend of ours, Zach Taylor. He's a really good buddy of mine. I said the second she came out of the curtain, I wanted to know who she was, where she was from, what she's about to do, because you look absolutely terrifying. So how hard was it for you to make that switch, to flick that switch in your head? And do you still struggle with it today?
It's really, this is going to sound absolutely psychotic, but it's not a struggle at all. It's, there's no, it's like flipping the Durden switch is just, like.
Speaking of Zach Taylor.
Hey, Bubba.
He always got to pop in every now and again. And by the way, we are live in Real Pro Wrestling's YouTube page. Zach Taylor's promotion. Zach, thank you for allowing us to stream on your platform. But
Yeah,
Chelsea, you were saying,
for spelling my name wrong, asshole. Just kidding. Or am I? So, God, what was I saying? That's the attention span thing we're not right.
She probably could. She most definitely could.
I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, but easily.
Maybe, I'll go ahead and say this for the viewers just before Chelsea gets finished. And I promise I'm going to stop cutting her off. If Chelsea's willing, I'm going to be at the Atomic Wrestling Show this weekend. Chelsea's going to be there. We're going to get into her match and all that stuff. If Chelsea's willing, I will record getting chopped by Chelsea just so all of you can see her kick my ass. If she's willing. If not, that's on her. But if she's willing, I will record a video of me taking a chop from Chelsea. It's one of the things I do on my Twitch channel. I take chops from random people here, and they love seeing me get hurt.
I'll see how my chopping hand is feeling tomorrow.
I feel like I just stuck my foot in my mouth. But the transition from who you are before the bell and after the bell.
It's like I said, it's going to sound really psychotic, but it's not difficult at all. Like the flipping the switch from Chelsea Roth to Chelsea Durden is not at all difficult for me, because the question is just what would Chelsea be like if she had no filter and just gave in to all of her impulses to do whatever and say whatever within reason. Within a little bit of just like a little bit of reason. And that's it. It's, they always say the best characters are really just yourself turned up to 11. So I turn it up to like 15 or 16. And that's just how I do it. Like everything that I hold in throughout the week, trying to be a part of normal society, like going grocery shopping and going to the gym without murdering anybody, is just completely, I'm like, well, I can be Chelsea Durden tonight. So I'm going to crank that loose for a few hours, lasso it back in at the end of the night. And that's how I do it. That's me. That's my vision. So,
and I meant to ask you this in the beginning when we were talking about you getting married and your husband also being a wrestler, setting the line between the two characters. Is it easier for you being in a wrestling relationship, being able to, so basically what I'm trying to ask is, so like I used to be in like a lot of promo leagues where I would shoot promos and we would do that with each other, just me and a group of friends. A lot of them are here watching, but I would try to show my wife and she wouldn't get it. Like she knew that wasn't who I am. She knew I was playing a character and she would laugh. So naturally, as anybody would. But you being in a wrestling relationship, when you're working on your character, when you're doing your character development, when you're working on your promos, do you find it easier being in that kind of wrestling relationship because he's there to give you that feedback and really help you, or does it not really make a difference?
It makes so much of a difference in a really good way, because we're easily each other's best sounding off board, and we don't pull. We're absolutely setting the fucking ring on fire, Zach. Why would you even ask that?
She's offended that you had to ask.
God. Anyway.
Chelsea, you're amazing.
We're each other's best sounding board. We don't pull punches with each other at all. If it was good, we'll tell each other. If it sounds stupid, I'll be like, that is the dumbest fucking thing I've ever heard. How about we change it? And it's him. He's got such a creative mind for storytelling and character development and stuff, because training at 3D, he's seen a host of crazy characters come through those doors. So he's seen from Chuckles the Clown, Sam Shaw, Fabulous Fitness, and so many different things from all opposite sides of the spectrum that he really has. If I'm like coming up with a concept or something and he's like, he'll find a nice way to say it. He's not going to say like, I love you, but that's the dumbest fucking thing I've ever heard. He's going to be like, okay.
He doesn't want to hurt your feelings, but he wants to give you the proper feedback.
Yeah, of course. So he'll be like, okay, or how about that? and it's been like really a great part of a wrestling relationship. And of course, it also helps because he's also a wrestler. He gets wrestling. It's like, oh, we can't do this weekend. We got to go to Georgia and do this thing.
So I seen on your Instagram. By the way, guys, if you don't follow Chelsea Durden on Instagram, you really are missing out.
You're fucking up.
But I was looking at your Instagram, and in your wedding dress, you are about to take 2 consecutive super kicks. Do you, and neither one of them by your husband, by the way, but do you and your husband just like, I've always wondered this with like wrestling marriages. Are there times where you guys are just like walking around the house on a normal day, just chopping the shit out of each other, or, just doing crazy wrestling stuff to each other in the PG sense, by the way? That's what I'm getting at. But is that like a normal thing that happens in your guys' household?
Constantly. Like I'll walk into the kitchen. I'll walk into the kitchen and he'll be like, duck a line, and I'll duck and feed around and throw a shot. He'll fucking block it. I'll snatch, but I'll block his, and then I'll snatch the arm, and like then we're just like chain wrestling in the kitchen. It's a constant thing. It just like I'll go up to him and I'll just like forearm him in the face, or eye poke of doom, and he'll sell it for like 15 straight minutes, like going around the living room, like, I can't see anymore. What have you done?
You hear that, Zach? Chain wrestling, that thing you absolutely suck at. But anyway, I always give him shit because he never chain wrestles, and it pisses me off. But we have a comment coming in from Daniel Smith. He's a huge supporter of the show, watches absolutely every show, goes and follows everyone who's ever on the show. He says, Kevin, would it be possible for me to get a shout out by Chelsea, please? Watching from England.
What is up, Daniel? I am super glad that you have the COVID vaccine. Stay safe, stay jacked out there, my brother, because that is the key to life. Staying safe and staying jacked.
Absolutely. So let's get into, your journey through pro wrestling, because you have a very big match coming up this weekend. I'm really looking forward to watching it. But before we tell everybody who you're going to be facing, who are some of your matches that really stood out to you? Not so much for name value, but I mean, if they are one of the ones that have name value, great. But more like for sentimental reasons, like who do you feel like has taught you the most in wrestling, and who are some of the matches that you really, hang your hat on?
Oh my God,
I know it's such a loaded question.
I've been really, really fortunate so far throughout my career to work some incredible fucking people. I have shared the ring with Rachel Ellering, who I have so much fun working with. Like she's a great human being, and she loves wrestling just as much as I do. She grew up in it, obviously. And I had a great time every time I worked her thus far. I wrestled this girl from Puerto Rico named Vanilla Vargas. She's with AAA right now. She's currently home in Puerto Rico because she just had a baby. But I like to say that she's the best friend I have that I can't understand, because I speak very little Spanish. She speaks very little English, but we both understand more than we speak. So she'll talk to me in Spanish, I'll reply in English, and she'll reply in Spanish. It's great. I've worked her in different states, different countries, and she's incredible. I've learned so much working with her. The longest match I've ever had was with her in Bogota, Colombia.
How long did you guys go?
It was like 25 minutes long.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like I went to the military when I turned 20, but I started indie wrestling when I was 15. But I always knew it wasn't going to last because I always wanted to go to the military. And until you're actually in the ring going move for move, wrestling somebody, chain wrestling, slamming, whatever you're doing for 25 minutes, it doesn't seem like a long time. 25 minutes will wear you the hell out for the next 3 weeks.
Especially with that particular match, Bogota is about 8,600 feet above sea level.
Oh.
And Vanilla Vargas has asthma. So
what a warrior.
So we were both dying.
Just
I had never really been like in the mountains before, so I hadn't, and I was only there for like a day before the show, before we worked. So like my body hadn't had time to like adjust to the altitude or anything. So like I was gassed immediately. She was gassed immediately. The ring was like, bless that promotion, but the ring is like 100 years old.
Stiff bumps.
Oh my God, it came together. I watched them building it and I watched them take it apart. It's like 17,000 pieces and the wood is like drilled down.
Oh my God.
So the ring had like no give. No give. The ropes were like scary because they had been taped over so many times because like the tape would wear off, so you put on more tape.
Of
that
course.
It was like spiky.
Jeez.
And like I would hit the ropes and be like,
one final question. Well, not my final question, but before you start to transition, outside of pro wrestling and the other things that you enjoy, this weekend in ARW's new home of Melbourne, Florida, you and your tag partner are in a mixed tag team match against the House of Heathens. The House of Heathens consists of Damos and Teal Piper, daughter of Hall of Famer Roddy Piper. How do you feel going into this match?
Well, I'm pretty confident in myself because as you may or may not know, I'm a fucking body guy, which means I can handle fucking anything. Damos is a fake body guy. He thinks he's a body guy, but he's really not. I'm a fucking body guy, and I know how to do this shit. Like, I've got this on lock, all right?
I am not doubting you in any way, shape, or form, so please don't take this the wrong way. But you mean to tell me that Chelsea Durden, with zero fear, is about to walk up to Damos, a guy who stands roughly the same height as me and your husband, jacked to the sky and back, and you're just going to slap him in the face?
Yeah, like, but
figuratively or literally?
Both. Body guy mentality starts up here, man. Like, being a body guy was the best decision I ever made in my whole life. I woke up and I was like, one morning I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to be a body guy. Best decision I ever made. And you know what? My partner, Alex Todd, he's a fucking body guy too. So we're going to fucking do this. And am I nervous, going up against the daughter of one of my favorite wrestlers of all time? Absolutely. I'm like, I said a prayer to the senior Mr. Piper the other night, and I said, I love you, man, and I'm sorry for what I'm about to do. But I got to show her what it really means to be a body guy. And once Teal understands what it is truly to be a body guy, then I think we're going to come to a really good understanding. Maybe we'll be friends someday. Who knows? But as I know right now, not this weekend. Definitely not this weekend. Maybe like midnight on Friday after show day, I'll be like, yo, you want to go get a milkshake? She might be like, yeah. Is there protein in it? Yeah. That's how you know that the body guy mentality is taken over. You got to have your macros on point. You got to have your proteins, your carbs, your fats.
Chelsea, you're absolutely amazing. My buddy Dustin, in response to my question about you just slapping Damos in the face, says, you're dang right. Durden means no fear.
Truth. So, fucking truth.
We have Daniel Smith saying, go Chelsea, kick some butts, and more comments of the same. So you're not just a pro wrestler. Like, there are many layers to who Chelsea Durden really is. And one thing that I find, pretty awesome about you is, much like myself, you have your own podcast.
I do.
What was it that got you into podcasting, and what do you think was harder, launching up or getting into podcasting or getting into wrestling? Because neither one of them are, and I'm by no means trying to put myself on the same level as somebody who has gone to school, getting bookings and stuff like that. By no means. But making a podcast ain't the easiest thing to do.
Yeah, it's not. There's a lot that goes into it. We really learned on the go. The podcast is called Demon Road Diaries, and it's myself and my brothers of the tag team called Dakota, Ronnie Rios and Caden Green. They're actually the ones.
Those were the ones that were going to super kick you.
Yes, they were the ones super kicking me in the face. I did
my homework.
We cut a promo at my wedding.
Of course you did.
It's because of course we did. They're two of my absolute best friends in my entire life, and I love them to death. And they actually started the podcast. They were like, they wanted to start a podcast that would be, their guest would be whoever they were riding in a car with to whatever show, and that's why it became called Demon Road Diaries. Unfortunately, the podcast started at the end of February of 2020. And Demon Road Diaries very quickly became Demon Home Diaries, and we were recording on Skype. How I came into it is I was a guest basically on like episode 3 or something. We have myself, Alex Todd, and the members of the Coda also form a group called the Mighty Mopin' Gothic Rangers. So we had a Goth Rangers
I
episode.
saw the design on your Instagram. I really liked. I'm a huge Power Ranger fan.
Hell yeah!
You can't see it, but there is a Power Ranger morpher at the very top of this bookcase. I'm a massive Power Ranger fan. Always have been.
It's fucking moping time, brother. After that, Ronnie Rios started. He lived with me in my apartment during quarantine for like about 4 months. Samson was in Israel, and his job was totally closed. So we were like, fuck it, let's be roommates for a little while. And that's when I started recording with them because, 2 out of 3 of us were in the same apartment. So we figured, fuck it, right? Why not? And I became, from like episode 3 on, I was a co-host, and we really learned on the go of how to do everything. Caden does most of the audio editing, and the 3 of us work on getting guests. I do a little bit of the art, even though I'm terrible at it, but I'm working on it. Like cover photos for the episodes. And we've been listening to like dozens of other podcasts and looking at how they format things and trying to apply best practices to ours as well. It's not easy. There's a learning curve, and especially with trying to consistently put out a good product every Wednesday, which is when our episodes drop. It wasn't easy. That being said, wrestling, like getting into wrestling, I would think is harder just because everything that makes it difficult to learn what the hell you're doing with podcasting and stuff, developing a formula, having a guest schedule, or at least, a schedule of like talking points or anything like that. That's all part of wrestling too. Mm-hmm. So it's like you take all of that and then add the physical aspect, you add wrestling politics. It's like running for office, I swear to God. And it's not, it's like there needs to be like a fucking Khan Academy, school schedule to learn all of the aspects of wrestling that don't even have to do anything to do with the physical part.
So, Pops, I see your question, and I'm definitely going to get to that in just a second. But there are a few other questions I have for Chelsea before we get into that, because I interview people from pro wrestling and pro wrestlers all the time. I rarely ever get to sit down and talk to another podcaster. And, we have a lot of people in the chat right now who also have their own podcast or aspiring to start their own podcast. And one of the questions I always get is, do you have any advice for somebody who wants to start their own podcast? And what I tell them is just do something you're passionate about, because if you're not passionate about it, if you can't sell it, nobody's going to buy it. It has to be something that you completely believe in, something that you are passionate about. What would your advice be to anybody who is looking to start their own podcast?
I would say something very similar, because the podcasts I've noticed just through my own research and just as a consumer of podcasts over the years, the ones that flop don't really have a direction. There can't, not everybody can be a show about nothing and that, succeed and evolve. Like that's the exception to the rule, not the rule itself. So if you have something that you're really passionate about and can talk for hours, even if it's like a really niche thing, that's still going to have, its own society, its own corner of the internet that will flock to any type of product that they can consume about it. So whether it's like surfing or origami or a specific type of cooking, anything like that, if you can create content about that, if you have enough content to fill a time slot of talking about it and can have like a
dang chair shots again.
Oh God, those unprotected chair shots, those fucking gnats, man. Yeah, it's have an idea. It's if you're charismatic enough to do a show about nothing, by all means have a show about nothing, and it could be one of the most entertaining things anybody has ever seen. But majority of the time, you have to have something you can work with, and then build off of that. And don't be afraid to get creative. Don't be afraid to do anything different and dive into something that's never been done before. There might be a reason why a certain thing hasn't been done before, but there also might not be, and you're never going to know until you try. The worst thing that happens is you do a few episodes and you have 2 or 3 viewers and it's just your mom and her friends. But it can also be incredibly rewarding because here I am, a year later after we started this crazy thing, and we have more than 50 episodes at this point.
Yeah, and those are 2 of the things that I always tell. Those are the 2 next things that I always tell people is, first, if you're worried about your numbers, go ahead and just kick that to the curb for like the first 6 months to a year. Don't worry about your numbers. Numbers will come, but you have to be passionate about what you talk about. Worry about your content. Worry about your consistency is a big thing. If you tell people it's gonna drop every Wednesday, for me it's every Thursday. Don't have them sitting around waiting for an episode that's never gonna drop. Make sure you're consistent. And completely lost track of what I was gonna say next.
Sorry, it's like a disease.
And have a direction of where you want to go. Don't make this podcast saying, "Hey, I'm gonna sell you guys hamburgers," and then when everybody shows up, you try to sell them tofu. That's not what they came here for. Make sure you know make sure you have your topic. Like you said, not everybody can do a podcast about nothing. And I think Pops may have fell asleep on his keyboard with this one, but he says, I like that Chelsea does like I do and loses track in the middle of talking.
I don't know that that's a good thing, Pops, especially at my age, but I'm keeping positive about it.
Nah, Chelsea, you're going to be just fine. So one question that I really like to ask people as we're getting into the last leg of the interview, one thing that I always like to ask people, so you stated earlier that you've been wrestling for about 7 years now. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so knowing everything that you know now and all the experiences you've had to this day, if you were able to go back and tell yourself one piece of advice 7 years ago when you're starting on this journey, giving everything you know now, what would that advice be to a 7 years in the past Chelsea Durden?
Don't fucking train at that school. Go to another school. Move to Orlando right away. Just don't fucking train there. Don't ruin your life. Don't become the face of a fucking movement and become ostracized from society. That was a little dark. I didn't mean to go to a dark place with that. But.
No, Chelsea, this is your time. You can talk about whatever you want. I mean, we can move on if you want to elaborate. If you want to go deeper, that's fine. But I kind of get the feeling you might not want to. It's completely up to you.
I try not to make everything about speaking out, but goddamn it if it doesn't happen anyway. Oh, I'm getting a baby. Oh, yeah, okay. So they
How's it going, man? Is that your husband?
No, it's not. This is not my baby. This is my nephew. We're at a couple of our closest friends right now who are also wrestlers, and I'm hanging out with my little guy here. His name is Peanut. I named him that. But they think they kind of sensed that I was starting to upset myself, so they handed me the baby. But anyway,
well, like I said, if you don't want to talk about this, we can just move right on.
No, it's all good. I'm trying to become more comfortable about talking with it. I spoke out against the abuse I received from my first trainer at Coastal Championship Wrestling back a couple of years ago. It started when I started training and it ended when I left in January of 2019. So I definitely tell myself not to train there. Like, boys and girls, find reputable schools, reputable trainers. Like, ask your friends, read some, like, wrestling schools have Google reviews now. Like, look at the trainer and ask yourself, have they been where I want to be at like a consistent level? Have I ever heard of this person before? You know, let me ask around the local indie scene. What's this guy or girl's reputation? And, you know, maybe fucking listen when people tell you not to train there. You know, it's I don't want anybody getting hurt the way I got hurt. So be careful out there, man. Like, people suck.
Well, Chelsea, on behalf of me and everybody watching, I thank you for elaborating on that and really speaking out and taking a stance against this kind of stuff, because that's the only way it stops. And I know it's a touchy I've never been in that position. I'm not going to pretend to know what it's like, and I'm not going to insult you by saying I know what you went through, because I don't. But I do want to thank you for being strong enough to stand up so that maybe it doesn't happen to the next person, or maybe somebody else is now is comfortable through watching you to stand up and speak out, because there are a lot of bullshit claims, but for the ones that are legit, for the ones that really happened, they deserve justice just like anybody else. So for you to really take a stand and stand up, and for something that is so emotional, I have a whole new, I've always respected you. I've always respected your work, but I have a whole new level of respect for you for being that spokesperson and really standing up and trying to fight against a corrupt system. So thank you for that.
It's why I did it, is to make sure it doesn't happen to anybody else. And it's going to happen because, you know, predators sneak underneath, you know, they hide in things like wrestling, because wrestling has become so legitimized over the past 5 to 10 years. But on the independent level, it's still very much an outlaw sport. And, you know, there's no background checks on trainers. There's no certifications. And so abuse of power that leads to other terrible types of abuse, it's still common. It's still, it happens everywhere. It happens right under people's noses. So if I can, you know, stop that, you know, even a little bit, even just in my corner of the world, even in my corner of independent wrestling, then that's why I talk about it. That's why I do it. That's why I bring it up.
Absolutely. And I promised Pops I was going to ask this question, and I wouldn't feel right by ignoring it after I told him I'd ask. But Pops writes in and says, so question, how long before we see Chelsea go against Sue Young in ARW?
Oh, yeah, I have.
If I know Chelsea like I think I do, she's chomping at the bit.
I've been begging. I've been begging to face Sue Young at ARW since before she returned to ARW, because she performed there well before I did. You know, back when they first started running, and I've been like, but what about Sue? But what about Sue? How about Sue? Is she free? How about Sue? Is she free this weekend? Because I just, you know, that's been since I started since I started wrestling on the independent scene, one of my dreams has been to face her. I think we are both just the right amount of absolutely fucking insane to have a killer match. And I have like shit. Alex Ridd will tell you if he asks that, like, I'm at the level of like fucking slipping notes under the door and be like, hey, how about I baked you cupcakes, and if you eat them, then you'll feel really good about making a match between me and Sue. It's like, I guess
if you eat
I'll
these homemade
see.
cupcakes, that's a contractual agreement. I get Sue.
That's not exactly what I wrote in the icing, but it's pretty close.
So, Chelsea, we're getting close to that 1 hour mark, and I cannot thank you enough for coming on here and being so willing to talk about everything, not just the bad stuff. This has been a fantastic interview, and I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. But,
yeah, man, had a good time here.
Before we go, is there anything about Chelsea Durden that your fans may not know that you would like to tell them, or anything that they may not know about you that you want them to know?
I'm pretty open, I think, with my fans, and I don't think there's any side of me that I haven't shared. I'm a gigantic softie. I have 5 cats. If you ask the manager of my apartment complex, I have 1 cat and 0 dogs. But I do have 5. I'm a crazy cat lady. And I love animals. Be good to the animals, man. Be good to the world. And that's the part of how I developed my character into what it has become today, is that people aren't good to the world anymore. So the whole thing about I'm like having a brain freeze. My brain is usually a thesaurus, but it's not today.
I hope you don't take this. I hope this isn't disrespectful by me saying, but I really get like a Sarah Logan kind of vibe from you when I watch you wrestle.
That's not a disrespectful thing.
Okay, great.
She's fucking great. I love Sarah Logan, and
I mean, your husband looks like a Viking who would kill somebody, so it kind of fits.
It's the whole concept behind Ragnarok, and how I've incorporated it into the character of Chelsea Durden. Is the idea of it is, the world ends in a catastrophic way, to start over and start anew. And I'm like, well, everybody sucks now. So, I mean, everybody's always kind of sucked. Humans have been terrible to each other since humans started becoming a thing. So you just end the world, you murder fucking everybody, and then you just like start over, because
now you're starting to sound like Zach.
That's what that fucking pagan religion. He doesn't even want to start over. He just wants to end. I want to start over, and like I want green fucking pastures, Zach. I'm gonna get them.
So I completely forgot about this question, and I know I've already gone over the hour. So if you will just enlighten me, entertain me for one last question. Did I hear right that you want a death match?
I want every death match. Like I said earlier, that I'm ready to go. I'm ready to fucking die. Like, shove me off that balcony through a table made of light tubes. Fucking do it. I have like a weird psychotic wrestling death wish, and I am ready to fulfill it. My husband is shaking his head. He doesn't understand why. But I'll give you this quote from dear Father Effie, who provided me with this quote, because I was talking to him a few weeks ago, and I said,
Effie's great.
Effie's fantastic. And I was telling him, my husband doesn't understand why I want to do death matches so badly. And he was like, oh, sweetie, I know exactly why you want to do death matches. It's not till you're drop kicked off the stage or a balcony and you fall backwards into a table made of light tubes and gussets, and feel it pierce your skin, that you really feel alive for the first time. And I'm like, fuck, he put it into words.
So let me ask you this question. Wanting to do like deathmatch style kind of wrestling, by any chance, were you able to watch AEW last night? Did you see the Lights Out match?
I didn't. I don't have cable, so I'm not able to watch it until like the next day when I can replay
Chelsea,
it.
I am going to give you my Hulu password. You have to watch this match. It was absolutely phenomenal. Thumbtacks, ladders, chairs, the works. Britt Baker and Thunder Rosa tore the house down. I was just going to get your opinion on the match. Because
I saw screenshots and I saw pictures of them afterwards, and I was like, blessed children baptized by blood and barbed wire. God, my husband wants to kill me right now. Actually, he wants me to not die. That's the whole thing. That's why he's shaking his head.
Well, on that note, this, like I said, this has been a great interview. I don't want to keep harping on this because I will take a chop from Chelsea if she's willing. I'm not taking a chop from her husband. I actually enjoy breathing and not having a collapsed lung. So that's not going to happen no matter how many times you guys ask. You've been asking in the chats. Not going to happen. Not going to happen. Chelsea, before we get off here, please let everybody know where they can find you, follow you, and keep up with your amazing career.
I will leave you with the sign off that I usually do on my own podcast. You can find me on Instagram at Durden Says, on Twitter at The Durden Says, prowrestlingtees.com/Chelsea Durden if you're interested in helping me put my cat through college and keep the fucking lights on in this place, brother. Please leave my mother alone on Instagram. She's a very nice woman. She sees all of your comments. And she's just here to have a good time, man. And as always, from both of us here, myself, Chelsea Durden, Heel Kevin, my husband, Samson, and the baby, we hope that you stay safe and stay jacked.
On that note, guys, there's no better way for me to end this show. Chelsea did it better than I could ever possibly do it. I just want to remind you guys, make sure you check out our amazing sponsors like thecoldestwater.com. They make some of the best water bottles I've ever had, and they just released their Pet Bowl line. Also, thefirstwarrior.com, guys, for all of your patriotic clothing needs. At thefirstwarrior.com, promo code WRS to save 10%, and promo code wrestling at the Coldest Water to save 10%. Let's be honest, guys. Has there ever been a better promo code than promo code wrestling? I don't think there ever has been. But with that being said, this has been the War Room episode with Chelsea Durden. It's been a fantastic show. We will be back next Thursday with another pro wrestling interview. No stream this Friday or tomorrow because I'll be heading down to Florida to watch Chelsea do her thing in person. And I'll make sure I post a bunch of clips for you guys. But Chelsea, if I can have just one more minute of your time after the live feed ends, I'd really appreciate it. And guys, we will see you next week when the War Room is live this coming Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern, with another pro wrestling interview. Thank you guys, and good night.